Veteran rock band Therapy have been touring the UK in celebration of their 30-year anniversary of an album they released called Troublegum, which happened to be the first album I ever heard of this band 25 years ago. Time flies when you're listening to rock, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I was so excited to have the opportunity to go to the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London to see that album and all those songs played in full, having been such a fan for a long time as I have. But before I get to their live set, there was a support act by the name of Deux Furieuses, which I understand translates as Two Furious Women. And true to the name, there were two women in the band, and that was it. And they were on stage. And I think it lacked a little bit of the furiousness that was promised by the name. Lyrically, there was a bit of furiousness because it's a kind of political focused band. A lot of things to say in that world. But the performance itself was pretty measured, pretty relaxed overall. So it wasn't as furious as the name might have implied. For whatever reason, I didn't particularly connect with their music and their delivery. I think I'm sort of surprised a little bit that they were opening for such a prestigious, as I see it, tour of Therapies. I'm sure there'll be a lot of other bands that might be a little bit more visually and orally engaging, perhaps, with the audience. From what I've seen of the decades of gigs I've been at, it was a fairly mediocre performance in terms of engagement and also the songwriting itself. There was a lot of repetitions of melodies that weren't particularly interesting, and some of the there's a lack of fury and angst to match up with the actual intensity of the lyrics at times, which I thought was quite odd. I don't know. Didn't quite land for me, but maybe others left that gigs thinking that they were fantastic, right? Music is very subjective. They just weren't quite as exciting for me as I would have hoped, perhaps. Once they finished their set, the venue started to get busier and busier, and then I remembered, oh yes, this is a sold out gig, pretty sure, and it absolutely seemed that way. It was like sardines in a can. Whenever you ended up in a spot in that crowd before the band came on, maybe like 20 minutes before the band, that's where you're probably going to be for the rest of the night, because it was that stacked and busy. And it's very cool to see that amount of keen support for this band that have been going for decades now, especially for this album that is much loved amongst their fandom. So it made for a very exciting sort of rumble within the crowd as we anticipated Therapy coming on for their set. Now, what was quite interesting and very apparent early doors was that they were not going to play the album from start to finish in the order of the album. I've never before seen a full album tour promised and the actual set list not be the album in order. So that's quite a creative and unique thing to do. However, I found it to be quite frustrating because I wanted to experience that whole thing from start to finish. Now, in fairness, apparently in the past they have done that. They've played the full thing in order of the album, and they didn't want to redo that thing again. You know what? That is their prerogative. That is fine. But it did mean that you knew you'd have to wait probably until the end of the set for them to play the biggest hit of theirs, I believe, in Screamager. So you were in for the ride, and I can understand from their point of view that, like, we're going to have you wait for the big song you really want. Come with us on the journey first and be patient. I didn't want to be patient. I was so excited to hear Screamager, the second song, and then be like, right, and then the next song, and your brain's remembering the songs in a row and then getting excited for those and knowing what's coming up and knowing how much the album is left as you go along. That's something I love in a performance. So I was a little bit disappointed from that, but that's my own expectation. It's nothing against Therapy and their choices. It's their prerogative. It was still cool to, at some point during the evening, hear each of the songs from that album. There's so many moments where a song would start and you go, oh, that fucking song. Oh, this is amazing. You know, the crowd sing along. People are jumping around and moshing. And you could see different pockets of people in the crowd connecting with different songs in big ways as they went through their set list. It was an impressively long set. I think they played for 2 hours and like 20 minutes. It was like, their encore was at least 8 songs. It might have been 20. It was a long encore. It was already about 10 p.m. I was like, okay, we'll get a couple songs. Some song and then Screamager and we're out. But no, they really, really went for it. And all of it was performed well within their sound and their kind of vibe. This was very much a celebration of like how music was 30 years ago. In a lot of ways, right? You know, it was just a backdrop. There's no LED crazy lighting, minimal smoke effects used. It was band on stage, guitars, crowd, let's play. And there is a certain kind of live, dangerous magic to that, which I adore. However, there's also the risk that if you don't have a click track and you're very excited on stage, you might, for example, play a song too fast, as technically Scream Major was. It was played far faster than it would have been on record, which for me was a little bit of a shame because I really liked particularly the tempo of that song. I think it suits really well. And as it was played quite fast, it became much more of a punk song, which has a charm because it's different live. And so that's kind of a special thing, but it wasn't quite as in keeping with the song on the record that you might know and love as I personally loved. Given that it is a 30-year celebration of this album, and they clearly wanted to make it as representative of that era and how they performed these songs live in that era, if you had gone to see them then, and then you saw them in the modern age of 2024, and it's so potentially very similar to how it was 30 years ago, it must be an incredible, like re-engaging a memory in the current day. What a treat that would have been. And also, if you never had the opportunity to see them back then and you wanted to know what that was like, this is a rare chance to have done so. If you give me the option to have seen Green Day playing Dookie the same way they would have played it back in the 90s, for example, it would be really cool to get that opportunity, which is essentially what I think Therapy were doing on this tour. So certainly for the fans who were lucky enough to go to that gig, it was a very special thing to be able to witness live and enjoy that, you know, kind of dangerous live thing of who knows what's going to happen in this lack of polished sort of performance. Again, there's a cool charm to that. It was a real privilege to have the opportunity to go and see that gig live and experience all of the songs from the Troublegum album that I love so much. Has been such a big part of my kind of rock music education, I suppose, having had my drum teacher 25 odd years ago introduced me to that album as an example of some great drumming, some things I want to check out. So pretty special for me to have the chance to experience that one. But anyway, that's my whistle-stop tour of what that gig was like in London as part of the Troublegum tour of Therapy. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more videos like this in your YouTube feed, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. From time to time, I will do live reviews. There's a few great gigs coming up. Thank you for watching this. Maybe I'll see you in another video very soon.